Welcome to another Decaf Thursday. Mark, are you decaf or not today?
Yeah, I've got the coffee, the Coke coffee
I
soda.
really do worry about your blood pressure and your caffeine intake. Oh, and there's phone.
Yeah, Sloan's we're back in Tennessee, so she's snuggling.
I love that. Well, I'm in a hotel room in New York. It is very loud outside the window. It's been waking us up. Apparently, they're building a new, very large building right next to our hotel. And every morning at 5 a.m., it starts clanging so loud that I can't imagine what it sounds like to be actually out there.
There's a reason you got the best value out of any Marriott property there because the 5 a.m. construction's part of it.
We actually talked about that if the prices were going to go up when we left or when they finished the construction, because this is the only reason it's like we got it on all points is probably because of that, which
Probably. Plus, it also isn't that nice hotel, but
yeah, but I'll take it. We do
yeah.
what we can.
Yeah, I mean, that's what New York for cheaper. So how do you beat that?
Yeah, we're balling on a budget. We spend all of our money on food. And when I say we spent all of our money on food, I mean we balled out on food. So
And it sounded like you spent a little money on alcohol too.
I don't want to talk about that. I was peak unhinged Taylor the other night during the national championship game, which we'll talk about later. And I have very good reason to drown my sorrows. Anyway, so the latest news from the Fauci world of COVID awareness is what I'm going to start calling it now. Is
a new institution.
What?
The new institution, the Fauci world. It sounds like an acronym.
It's just he's living in his own thing. He's living in his own world. But he's finally understanding what we've been saying this whole time, which is, quote, sooner or later, everyone is likely to get infected with COVID. Guys, I've been saying this from the start. We had 2 weeks to flatten the curve, which turned into a year. And now we're finally on the same page that everybody's going to get infected with COVID, which the good news is that it's weakened significantly. I was actually looking at an article the other day that said a lot of the people who are in the hospitals are dying, have multiple comorbidities, which just means that it's not really COVID that's taking them over the edge. It's an unhealthy lifestyle. And so hopefully, I was actually talking about this with my friend last night, hopefully this now awareness will bring people to it's more important to live a healthy lifestyle than to be paranoid and wear a hazmat suit in the airport. That's my thing.
We're still not there though, from like the media perspective, right? Like you're hearing very little about how pre-existing conditions, being obese, things like that actually impact this. I mean, you're kind of hearing it from some side, like I mean, Joe Rogan's talked about this and people like that, but the mainstream media has not, like, they basically ignore that fact, and they're just really focused on like the mask mandates and the vaccine. They're kind of ignoring the personal health aspect of it.
Silly, Mark, that doesn't get views. Telling people to change their lifestyle and be healthy does not get views. It does not promote fear. Silly boy, that'll never happen. Honestly,
I mean, and the thing is, the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, kind of the original point of this was to keep the emergency room, not full, so there's beds. So I think the original point was like they kind of had, a lot of people will probably get this, but the point is we need to spread it out. So it's like we're almost back to where we were originally now, where they said, masks will stop you from getting it, stop spreading it. And like you said, I mean, I think that some people may have COVID was still a real thing. It still killed 700,000 or so people. It's a really big deal. 100%. But at least this latest version of it, not that it's not going to kill anybody, but Omicron is really, really weak compared to the rest of them. So like, it's not even the same. And the problem is that they're using the same rules as if it's the first one, where this one's more like, probably like not as bad as the flu, this specific variant. And they're still using the same rules with the NBA, with the NFL, with all these things, with like the idea that you have to quarantine, but like this is not the same as anything. And a lot of people have this feel fine. Like you could actually play in a basketball game with this and be fine. And a lot of the players wanted to, like, well, you're testing positive. It's like, it doesn't really matter at this point.
No, Mark, I actually saw on Twitter, California tells asymptomatic COVID positive medical workers to stay on the job. So like,
yeah. And if that's the case, it means like you're probably gonna spread it. So like, why do NBA players not be able to play when they feel fine? It's this whole, we talked about so many times, but like, we're just ignoring any science now. We're going with what we originally thought, which may not have been, which wasn't right in the first place. And we're actually like making that, we're not adjusting the different variants of this disease. I don't understand what's wrong with them. It's a joke. And like, people are going to take science as a joke. People take Dr. Fauci as a joke. And there's going to be another issue that's going to come up, whether it's another variant of this or a new disease, where people are going to say, like, I don't care what the CDC says. I mean, the fact they're making fun of the CDC and like Twitter, like, oh, the CDC says don't date a guy who texts you after 11 o'clock. It's like, they're making fun of this thing because of how inconsistent the CDC is. And like, I don't think they understand, like, that's the joke. It's awful. Nobody takes the CDC seriously. And yeah, these things are funny, but the whole point is that it's not based in science anymore. And everyone, even people who are, originally pro all that, are making fun of it, and they might not realize it, but they are.
People are getting tired of it, and I think that we've just started to see a lack of faith in government leaders and what they're saying is a response to COVID. Which I'm like, welcome to the party. You're a little bit late, but glad to have you. Like, I just don't have any faith in them.
I mean, better late than never, though, and hopefully, because this was going to happen again. Maybe not. I mean, variant of COVID, but like maybe something else, and we need to understand. Like, yes, we need to take science seriously. But when we talk about that, we need to talk about real science, not people's, ideas that are proven wrong, but then we still do this. I mean, there's still people who think that COVID spreads on surfaces. It's been like disproven for a year or a year and a half, but just because that was the original thought and like, oh, we need to clean things. Like, some people still haven't like updated their thinking. And those are the people who are on like the scientific left who don't.
I listen to my doctors. I do whatever they tell me to do, but that's why I don't watch any news on television, any 24-hour news, because they're just hypothesizing and freaking people out and making this a whole bigger deal than it needs to be.
And the vaccine is great. Like, I mean, I got the vaccine the first day. I think it's a really important piece to do that. But I think the way that it was sold is like, you get the vaccine and like everything's good. Like, that's not the case. It's like you just have better chances of not getting it, or if you get it, you have a chance it's not going to be as bad when you get it. And from what I understand, the Omicron, the vaccine basically does nothing for this part, for the Omicron.
That's what I've heard as well. But
so it's like, and it doesn't mean it's, but it's just this whole idea of, the vaccine's good, but the way you sold it, it seemed dishonest. Yeah. And it's not, and it is still good. And I think people should get it. Again, you have your own choice.
I got it.
You should get it. Yeah.
I got it. Y'all got it.
But the way it was sold was like kind of a false bill of goods.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I don't like to be sold. I don't like to be told to do something for a reason that's not valid. That makes
me to wear effing masks. So that was kind of part of the contract. If you get this, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. Nope.
Still wearing a mask everywhere I go, still masking. So what do you think is going to happen? The next thing we want to talk about is the Titans, but what do you think is going to happen with sports going forward? Do you think they're going to drop back down to limited capacity? I mean, I know that that's how the NFL is making money, and they're banking on a big year coming up to make up for last year. Like, what's going to happen?
The thing is, if you notice that the college football, for instance, in the NBA have already changed their protocols to make it a little bit better, where they're like, you don't need negative tests 2 days in a row. Just if you get 2 tests in one day, just to make sure you're negative. And I think it's actually, probably the other way, where if another variant that's just as weak or weaker than Omicron, I think they're eventually going to do what I guess California did, but they're going to say, you know what, you can, because they're losing too much money. You can play if you have this, as long as you're asymptomatic.
Right.
So no, I think they've lost too much money, and they realize that if they keep doing this for every new variant, they're going to go out of business. I mean, it's a pretty simple mathematical equation, especially when we keep hearing this is going to be part of the rest of our lives. Like, well, if we want to have a league, we can't go under every time a new variant comes up.
Yeah, I agree. Well, okay, so let's talk about the Titans then. This is a big year for the Titans. I don't follow them, but apparently everybody else does.
Yeah, they got the number 1 seed in the AFC, which means that they are the only team that has a bye, so they don't have to play in the first round.
I didn't know that.
Which is a huge deal, and the Packers have it in the NFC. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's interesting because people seem to, and myself included, seem to really write them off as Super Bowl contenders, even though they're the number 1 seed. And Derrick Henry's going to be back for the playoffs. They just haven't done an impressive fashion, and my opinion is that Ryan Tannehill, their quarterback, cannot get them to the Super Bowl. I don't think
you've actually been saying that for months. I will say that this is not just Mark being an antagonist. You've actually been saying this for months.
I don't dislike the guy. I think he's a fine quarterback, but I think you almost need a star quarterback or an incredibly good defense to get you the Super Bowl. And I don't think they have either. They have a good defense. They're kind of the Titans are interesting because they're kind of good all around. Every position they're good at. And I mean, they have running back is the position where they're elite at, right? When Derrick Henry's there. Oh, yeah. But I just don't see it. I mean, and not only me, but the Vegas lines don't see it. I think they have like the 4th best odds in the AFC, despite being the number 1 seed.
Wow.
So I wouldn't count them out. I mean, because they have a good defense, they have a good running game. If AJ Brown's there, I mean, they have a good receiving core. But it's a lot of people are getting excited. But even the biggest Titans fans, I know, like, yeah, I'm excited. This is such a great year, but like, I don't love our chances.
Okay.
But with that being said, their coach should win Coach of the Year. Mike Vrabel should be the Coach of the Year, because he did this without Derrick Henry for 8 weeks.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
And I mean, he like did such a great job with this team. They are not the most talented team in the AFC, but they are the one team, which is kind of how I feel like Coach of the Year should be decided. With that being said, I win money if the Bengals coach wins Coach of the Year, who's also in it. And they went from the number 1 overall pick last year, because they're the worst team in the NFL, to a playoff team with home field advantage in the first round.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
So it's really between those two, and then the Packers coach is in it too, who does not deserve to win. But my prediction is I'm actually taking a team that's got worse odds than the Titans to win the AFC. I like that Bengals team with the Cincinnati. I think they make the Super Bowl, and they probably go against everyone's kind of. I'm kind of counting Tampa Bay out in the NFC, but probably the Packers or the Rams / Cardinals, whoever wins that first round game. It's going to be one of those 3 teams, in my opinion.
Okay.
But we're cheering for the Titans. I'd like to see the Titans win. I think it'd be a cool story, and it's like a team I can cheer for. I just don't see it.
Okay. Well, I would love to see the Titans win. And if the Titans get out, then I go back to not caring.
The Titans kind of are reminiscent of the Jazz last year, where they had the number 1 seed overall, but nobody really believed in them. And it turned out correct for the Jazz. So I assume that that's probably going to be what happens to the Titans too.
Well, before we stop talking about sports, which I'm going to keep this section really abbreviated, because what I have in my notes is I didn't even type out what we're going to talk about. I just typed, I hate it here. So Mark, I can't talk about it. I really can't. You're going to have to take this.
Well, so the national championship game happened. It was a really good football game. Georgia and Alabama. Obviously, Alabama's Taylor's team, and they lost. But it was a good game. I think that the one thing to take away is that Georgia's had so much talent that it really was, and it sounds weird because Alabama's usually up there, but it almost was kind of unfair. And Saban, I think, for a second straight game, outcoached his opponent. But Kirby Smart wasn't outcoached as badly as he was the first time. And they just had so much talent to bring them over the top. And truthfully, I mean, I think if you asked Nick Saban, like, kind of off the record and said, hey, like, how do you think you did this year? This might have been his best coaching job that he's done. I mean, this team is, again, still one of the top 10 most talented teams in the country. It has a bunch of 5-star recruits, but this has probably been his least talented team in the past 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
And he got them to 1 loss. I mean, he beat the crap out of Georgia in the national championship game. SEC championship game. And it was a good game, though. And Justin even trolled me. I think he was trolling everyone. And he said something like, man, Cincinnati, Michigan would have been such a better game. Obviously, as a joke. But it was a good football game. I think that the talent level, or I think the teams were down this year, just in college football generally. I think there's a lot more.
You said that. You were saying that since August. Like, you've been saying,
even watching these other teams who didn't make the playoffs, like, there's no real argument over Cincinnati. Like, I mean, Notre Dame lost. Oklahoma State looked fine, but like they beat Notre Dame by 2. It's like Ohio State and Utah didn't play any defense. Like, these other teams that were close to the top 4 didn't really perform that well either. So I think the only thing that I can take away from watching this is that Michigan was actually not a top 4 team, but I don't know who to replace them with.
Right.
So I think that's what it comes down to. So I think that it was just a weak year. Georgia was super talented. And I mean, we saw, as much as I hate to admit it, I think we did see the 2 best teams in the country play.
It's true.
And I mean, there is something to that, because I feel like a lot of times the committee has messed up, and they gave Cincinnati a chance. And Cincinnati, I mean, I think that they were in the limelight. It's tough, but they performed well enough.
They did. They really did.
Nobody can say they didn't deserve to be there because they lost 58-0, right? Like, Michigan's, if you're arguing anybody who didn't deserve to be there.
Sure. And we had some players get hurt. That was sad. That was hard to see.
Well, I mean, we talked about this, and I think people didn't really realize how big of a loss Mechie was. And because, I mean, they're like, oh, they have Jameson, they have so many good players. But like, that is a veteran, good receiver. And then Jameson got hurt in the game when Alabama was still winning. So I know that they have a huge, they have a bunch of 5-star recruits at receiver, but like, losing your 2 best receivers is a big deal.
Well, one of my friends, who's a Tennessee fan, his dad always kind of trolls me on Instagram whenever I post things, but he's very kind this time. And he said, don't worry, you'll be back. So I'm just going to breathe deeply and not think about it and just think about next year.
it's tough, but also like I don't feel bad for you because you have won like 7 national championships in like the last 12 years. Like, you've won so much that like give someone else a chance.
Okay,
well, I wish it wasn't Georgia, but you win. If the Jazz win once, I will never complain about them losing ever again. If they win 1 championship, that's all I want. So you have like 7.
I guess you're just a better person than me. I will complain. I like to win.
Agreed.
I like to win. Okay, so the last topic, I'm really worried about this because I do a lot of things that Mark hates. I think we all know that Mark, generally speaking, does not like my personality. But
that's really strong.
Well, you didn't deny it. One of the things that I do that Mark hates is I incorporate movie quotes into everyday life. And I mean, just this morning, I incorporated a Cinderella story quote into a conversation with a friend. I got my friend who's with me in New York a t-shirt with one of our movie quotes that we just kind of say without being prompted. It's a really annoying thing that I do. Mark, I don't understand. You watch so many crappy movies that have so many good one-liners. I don't understand how you don't do this.
Oh, well, I mean, I did when I was like 18, but I grew up. Like, I think when The Hangover came out, everyone liked to quote that or like whatever.
Napoleon Dynamite, remember?
Oh yeah. Which I mean, that was always those dumb quotes. Or what's the other movie that people? Oh, Borat. People love quoting Borat. Yeah. But it's like, no, I mean, I think once you're an adult, you don't do that. And you're like, you can laugh about it when you're watching the movie and like say that was a funny line. But I think people who do it in their everyday life, it reminds me of 16-year-olds, which I think a lot of the stuff you do reminds me of. So I feel like
you're so mean.
No, I mean, it's like, it's fine. I just think that's like, I will say this, that you like to use the language of the younger generation. Like you use their like whatever the new words are. Like yours trying to be like a hip 30-year-old who's like 16 or 17. I mean, that's fine though. You're trying to stay young. I get it.
But Mark, it's so much worse than that because when the words start coming out, I don't know what they mean. And so I have to look them up. And so then by the time I know what they mean, they're not cool anymore.
Yeah, that's true. You're about 6 months. I mean, it sounds weird, but I feel like yeah, it sounds weird, but I feel like white people generally are behind on that. Like they use these words that like they've heard from like the Black community that aren't cool anymore, but like they use them at a time where it's like, oh yeah, I heard like lit's cool. It's like, no, nobody said that in 3 years. Like, but you think it's still cool. It's like just generally, I mean, not, but like it just seems like white people are a little bit behind and that they think these things are cool and like they're not anymore.
And I'm the worst among all of them.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. You're I mean, use all the words. I'm like, gosh, are you really saying yes? But it's not. But I mean, it's like it's fine. Like you're trying to. I feel like you kind of have a young personality, so like it kind of fits with how you are. You know, you seem.
I know when to turn it off. Also, though, like I say things.
I've heard you say some words in like meetings where I'm like, "Are you kidding me? What is like? I'm gonna blow my brains out just because you said that." I mean, your abbreviations are insane. Like you abbreviate the dumbest words. I'm like, oh gosh, I remember at our Stanford trip, you said 2 things while giving our presentation. I'm like, oh no, please. I even called you out on that.
You did.
But you like, slang. You like younger people slang, and I feel like this is something that younger people do. Is like they use movie quotes and stuff, and there's nothing wrong. I don't like it, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a personal preference.
My whole entire personality, everything about me has really just taken an absolute beating this episode, and I just need to take the L.
Well, let me. I will say something nice. I think that you are one of the nicest, most kind people I know. So I make fun of you because, obviously I like you a ton as a person. And these annoying things are funny to make fun of. But they do annoy me for sure. But you are.
And sometimes I have to say,
as a person, I think you're wonderful. And it's because we're friends, we can make fun of each other and the perceived flaws.
But when it comes to it, we'll always have each other's back.
Absolutely. I will never have your back for some of the slang you use, but for anything else.
But I'll roast the heck out of Mark. But if anybody else says anything about him, I buck up, and that's just how I am with our team.
Yes, no. I think that some people who don't know us just think we actually make fun of each other all the time.
Hate
like,
each other.
We actually are friends, and that's the reason we can do this, and we don't hurt each other's feelings.
Exactly. And if Mark goes too far, I'm like, okay, take it back.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly.
It's only happened a couple of times.
Interesting too that I was actually on. I was on your defense when some people were saying some mean things about Alabama. That I actually thought that was way out of line the day after they lost.
It's true. Mark called me the morning after the loss and was like, how are you? I was like, I'm bad, Mark. I'm really bad. And I was telling him that some people were like really talking some trash.
So me and Suzanne had a whole disagreement about this.
Yes, y'all did. Y'all really did.
Yeah. She thinks it's like a cool thing to do. Unless she's like, oh, you're the king of being a jerk on this. I'm like, not when they lose for the season. Only during the season, I'm a jerk.
Yes. At the very
when you're done for the year, that is a pain that I feel like is just one of the worst things for a team you love.
Suzanne did apologize to me, and in the afternoon, once I had kind of calmed down. In the morning, I was still like very upset about it.
I know. Yeah, I understand.
Tapping through Instagram and seeing all these people posting, and I was so upset. But in the afternoon, once I like kind of calmed down a little bit, I could talk again. But I will say, for all of your crap that you give me, you do not kick me when I'm down.
Yeah, Suzanne like didn't believe me. She's like, no, I don't believe you. I'm like, I promise. Like, I really don't do that. I'll kick again. If you lose during the regular season, I don't care. But like when your season's over, that's the worst. And it ends in a loss. So there's not a worse feeling than that. It's like all that time you spent cheering for that team, rooting for that team, watching the game of the season, it's over and not in a positive way. So it's like that's just hard. It takes me about a week to like be normal again.
Yeah, I'm still working on it. Well, my version of normal.
Yeah.
I'll give you that, Mark. But yes, for everyone listening who thinks that me and Mark hate each other, we actually don't. We actually really love each other. We are coworkers, but we kind of behave like siblings, and that's the best way that I know how to describe it.
Great. And this is my 15-year-old sibling who at least talks that way. So
this is my jerk older brother that puts me down a flight of stairs.
Basically, your 80-year-old brother's like, I can't deal with these young kids and their slang.
It's kind of how you are, very like Clint Eastwood, like get off my lawn, coming outside. Okay, well, on that note, thank you for making my personality feel 10% better than it was earlier on. One quick thing, Beacon Young Professional Society, we are having our January happy hour on the 25th. We have a Facebook event up right now. If you want to attend, click on that, get some details. We'll be celebrating National School Choice Week, which we will talk more about next week. And we're really excited for this one. So come and join us in Nashville on the 25th.
And it's a new year. So if you have any questions about it, just email Taylor. She'll give you details. As long as you're under what, like 40?
Yeah, but also like I kind of say, if you just want to come check it out, you can. But it's
Justin's about to age himself out of that group. He might not be able to come anymore. He's getting up there.
Sorry, Justin. All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys next week.